Recently, we had the news that disgraced fund manager Neil Woodford will be making a return with the launch of his new investment firm, Woodford Capital Management. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because his fund, Woodford Investment Management, was of course suspended back in 2019 in one of the biggest British investment scandals since the financial crisis that's still being looked into by the FCA, the UK regulator. In fact, some of his investors are still actually waiting for their capital back and have had to endure a further write-down on assets this very week. Meanwhile, Mr. Woodford has been having interviews feeling a bit sorry for himself, shifting the blame and launching his brand new business. Although he did say, "I'm very sorry for what I did wrong," so all's forgiven, right? I mean, actually, that apology didn't seem very heartfelt. It soon became clear that the only thing he was sorry for was the underperformance and not the avoidable mistakes that led to his clients losing money. So my question is whether failed fund managers like Woodford should get a second chance to manage money on behalf of investors. Now, fair enough, his new business is aimed at professional investors rather than private investors, so at least he's avoiding that minefield. And you know what? I'm all for forgiving people, and if he wants to go into a different line of business, fair enough. But should it be allowed that he's managing people's money again? Should he ever be able to get involved in the investment business? In my opinion, if the issue is just underperformance, I do think the fund managers deserve a second chance if their ability is worthy of it. So to paraphrase a famous quote, after an employee lost a business $500,000, the boss said, "Why would you fire them? They just had the most expensive training they could possibly go through." So look at people like Bill Ackman, for example. He's had big failures and big winners, but if you banished him after the failures, you'd never have moments like last year when he had one of the greatest trades of all time. So whether you're trading your own money or on behalf of clients, if your strategy doesn't perform well, if you overlook something, if you make a mistake, it's painful, but you can learn from it and redeem yourself. There's no point throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying that person can never manage money again. But Woodford is a totally different kettle of fish. He belongs in a unique category. In fact, it reminds me of John Merriweather, the famed founder of LTCM, Long-Term Capital Management, the most famous and high-profile hedge fund blow-up in history. So just a few years after being bailed out with LTCM, Merriweather was back out there trying to raise money for his new firm, JWM Partners, doing something very similar, followed then by JM Advisors. But why would he be trusted with capital ever again after what he did? You see, in both of these cases, both Woodford and Merriweather, the issue isn't just underperformance or some mistake, it's also about ethics. It's people letting their ego get in the way of their sense and not caring about the repercussions to their investors. They're just too busy playing with other people's money to give an SHIT. So it was actually reported this week that the UK regulator, the FCA, was first warned about issues with Woodford all the way back in 2014. That's 5 whole years before the fund was suspended. So their first intervention was then 2 years later, 2 years after that, when the FCA was actually headed up by the current governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey. So they investigated a potential conflict of interest in the business's valuation process. But they, by that point, were already managing £10 billion and were the 6th biggest hedge fund manager in the UK. Prior to that, 2 of the 4 founding partners had fallen out with Woodford and his right-hand man Craig Newman back in 2015. The reason for them falling out? Disagreements over the company's compliance culture and the level of due diligence being carried out on investments in private companies. Does that sound familiar? That's part of the reason for the failure of the fund in 2019. So in other words, Woodford was warned. His own founding partners, who had a vested interest in the business succeeding, had issues with the way that he was running things. They warned him. The FCA was alerted because of the way he was running things, and yet he persisted. And now, whose fault is it? Well, he owns the underperformance, but he blames Link Fund Solutions, the company that wound down his fund. Of course, it wouldn't be his fault, would it? His ego wouldn't allow that. And in fact, Woodford himself will have you believe that he's also a victim of what happened. As he said in his big interview, he doesn't want to hide away and beat myself up about things that happened the best part of 2 years ago. And yes, I'm sure your clients who are still waiting for money back and have had write-downs this week also agree, why worry about something that happened the best part of 2 years ago? That's ancient history now. Best to just avoid the blame altogether, right, Neil? Now, I just want to make it clear again, I have absolutely no problem with fund managers going through poor performance. It happens. Many funds suffered last year, for example, and I think on the whole, they should have the chance to redeem themselves and learn from what went wrong and try and make things right. I personally know people who managed money on behalf of investors last year and struggled. They suffered, had poor performance, and are now doing what they can to improve and fix the situation for their investors to redeem themselves. And they can become better fund managers from it. They have genuine intentions. But when a fund manager fails due to potential compliance issues from doing things they knew were not appropriate and they show little remorse about it, I think it's time to just disappear into the sunset. In the same way we expected from the bankers from the financial crisis, people like Fred Goodwin, just disappear, or at the very least move into a different business and not be allowed anywhere near other people's money ever again. You know what? I'm sure his nest egg is more than big enough to keep him going without needing the fees from clients. Anyway, let me know what you think. Do you agree with me or do you disagree with me? Is this a story you've even been following in the first place? Now, I'm not saying that I'm necessarily right here. This is just my opinion, and I'd love to hear your opinion as well. So please do let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching this little rant. Take care. See you soon.